Alright, well, I got my stream up too. I should start the timestamper.
All right, yeah, so... Oh, Sam's finally here. Good God. Finally, at last.
Yes, I don't know.
I got distracted with another meeting, or someone called me, I don't know. Whatever. What's going on?
We're trying to figure out if people are gonna, actually show up for our shows.
Well, sorry I'm a little late, and it sounded like our good friend IV is not going to show up.
IV.
You gotta get into your veins.
Yeah.
Oh my God. All right.
You grown a beard, Ty.
I am?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got a little.
This is the longest I've ever seen your beard, I think.
Well, you got the little Amish thing going on.
I just haven't shaved and trimmed up in quite a bit. That being said, during the winter, it actually does help a little bit.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not super interested in cutting it down right now because I'm not really a professional and I can do that. I can do my whole spiel. You all know it. So yeah.
No one cares if you shave or not, man. All good.
There's some that seem to. There's some that definitely seem to,
Well, okay.
Hey, look, I don't get people's proclivities, but I'll just simply suffice it as this: a world that people think that you have to wear a suit to look professional is probably not a world that I overly agree with. We'll put it in that regard, okay?
Well, Ty, unfortunately, all of DC is like that. So if you want to hang out in DC, it's what it's all about.
I want to hang out in DC. I do it if I had to, but it's no, I don't.
I mean, dude, you're trying to start a consulting company. Welcome to the world of consulting.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, let's be honest. That's not going to go anywhere. So yay.
Don't be doomer, dude.
Oh,
yeah, don't be doomer.
I am absolutely in doomer central. Let's go, boys.
Let's go.
It's like, what doomerism? Let's get it. Let's get it.
So what do you all want to talk about?
Nate said something about what was it? The Republican Party.
Well, Nate's not here. Nate's not here, so it's up to us what we want to talk about. If Nate gets his car stuff figured out and wants to show up, then he can contribute to the topic.
Damn. All right. Fair enough.
Fair enough, though.
Well, we're gonna let Nate determine what we're gonna talk about. Come on.
What do you want to talk about? I know that you always want to talk about yields and all this other stuff, but
that's just my favorite. That's where I talk about politics all day. So, like with everybody else. So I like talking about yields here. But I'm happy to talk more about the politics because the reason why I work in politics is because I can never get tired talking about politics. So, if that's what you all want to talk about.
We can do a little bit of sprinkle with both, I think. I'm just not as knowledgeable as you and Nate are when it comes to yield curves and all this other stuff. And I'm just like, bro,
I'm not that knowledgeable. It took me a year and a half to get this amount of knowledge. I just had to do a lot of reading.
I know, and I just don't have time for it anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I do.
That's what I did with my pandemic. Basically, during the pandemic, that's what I did.
I wish I would have done more reading during the pandemic.
Yeah.
To be honest. I have this massive library behind me that you can't see, but
oh, yeah. Well, so the big thing there's only one real new thing that's happening that's important here, and that is everybody's freaking out just as they have been about the markets going down, blah 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 blah, and yet, hold on, let me look at the.
Yeah, what's the curve at right now? I know it
it's just
inverse again.
It's just it's fallen to the point that it hasn't retested again yet. Okay, can I just share my screen real quick? This will be real quick. This is not like a this is not a long thing, but. All right, can you see that? So here we go. This is what it's been like, right?
All right, go for it.
So it's been going up and up and up and up, right? This is where it was in 2021, right? And it was bottomed out here, and it was going up and up and up and up and up and up. and up and up. Whoa! This is the tightest. This is the fastest tightening, by the way. It looks like kind of a gradual thing. This is like a graph that usually just looks like this, right? So it's like very gradual. This is the fastest tightening ever. So here we are, and it went up and found a peak, and then it went up and found a peak. And look at this. Lower high, a lower high, right? You know what that means? That means that signals a trend change. And then, boom, massive drop. And right now,
the Federico, I can't pronounce it, but the spiral curve thing, is that what's going on right now with this?
But this is just, I didn't tell what this is. This is the yield on the 10-year bond, the 10-year Treasury bond. So, and what I'm not looking at this like ooh, look, like, oh, we're gonna see what's going on. I'm telling you about chart patterns that are high probability based on what you see. So usually when you see a lower high, that signals a trend change. See higher high, right? Because there's always pullbacks in the market. So, but when it goes up to a high and then it goes back down and retests this middle line here, guess what? It didn't go down past that line. It bounced off of that line, and then of course it goes up to a new high, and that new high is higher than the previous high. That means that you're in an uptrend. And here, it made a new high after the retest, but it was a lower high. And then it fell through that middle line. And so what's happening right now is it's going back up to retest the middle line. And if it does make it above that middle line, that means that this was a fake out meant to trap people. Because it was definitely dropped and everyone's like, oh, get into the market, right? And then people get trapped, and then they just pop it right back. When I say they, what I'm talking about is big market participants, right, who want to trap people. They trap people in here by doing a fake out, and then they pull it back above, and then it just keeps on going up and up and up, right?
Yeah, how would that screw people over?
Well, if you're betting that deals are going to go down, then you're screwed if they go back up, right? Yeah. But this chart pattern indicates they're going to go down, a high probability that they're going to go down. So maybe a big market participant out there purposely pushed it down in order to trap people in before it, letting it go back up again, right? Like that's a case, right? Like Saudi Arabia is making a big stink right now that they're going to destroy. If you're looking at an oil market chart, it would be like a very easy case that they're a big market participant, right? So
right.
They can have an effect, right? And so what's happening right now is this retest of the failure. So if it pops back above, that was a fake out, and we're going much, much higher. And if it comes up here and then doesn't make it back above, that means we're going to have a precipitous drop.
That's the high threshold thing that people
it means that we fell below and then we failed to get back into the uptrend.
Right, because you hit the resistance.
And once that happens, then everybody's going to realize that it's a high probability that things are going to go way much further down, and everybody's going to start front running each other to get out. Right? They're going to be like, "Oh shit! Like, get me out of here! Sell! Whatever it is that would be. If you're betting on higher yields, you're going to be like trying to get rid of those bets as quickly as possible once it fails that retest, and which is going to that's going to create a lot of momentum to the downside, and we could be looking at yields back at 3% again, right? I mean, like
right.
And so when people talk about a Fed pivot, what this is saying is the market is now forcing the Fed to make a decision, because the market has said, hey, Fed, you're going to pivot. And the Fed has not indicated one way or the other. Right?
Well, I mean, they essentially have. They're tapering. They haven't yet, but that's been their entire spiel for the last year. Is that they're going to get it to 4.5.
Sorry. They've been doing 0.75 basis point hikes, and so these are people. This is the market telling them, go ahead.
But the Fed said that we're going to go to 4.25 to 4.75 range, and that's only like 0.5. That's only another 0.75 basis points.
And that's if the Fed keeps its word. And remember, the Fed never keeps its word. So just remember. When you go back through history,
like, if
they are really bad predictors of their own behavior 6 months in advance.
Sure, but if everybody thinks that they are actually going to keep their word, of course this is going to happen. We're just doing the chat.
Right. So that's the point is. Oh, hi, Jakandar. Who's Jakandar?
Is it Jackanard?
I brought him in. He's a pretty interesting guy. We'll waters out here.
All right, let me finish my thought and then hello and welcome. So hello. So what I'm saying is that the Fed has indicated what they're going to do. They've given their forward guidance. And so what the market is betting on is whether they're going to keep their word and in which direction. Are they going to do what they said? Are they going to pull a surprise on the market in that they're going to keep on raising interest rates more than they said already that they have? Or are they going to pull back faster than what they said? And at this point, I don't think that we don't have a lot of time left for them to pivot, right?
Yeah.
At this point, it's them
meetings.
keeping their word that they're going to pause or breaking their word to the upside in terms of yields. And so this real retest is actually about that, right? So meanwhile, if you look at financial news, everyone's like, oh my God, FTX is destroyed. Everybody's going to go to hell, right? Like that's happening. And meanwhile, what's actually happening is what the bond market is telling you is that we're about to have yields plateau or drop away. And when that happens, the market is going to go apeshit.
So what I'm hearing is that my $1,000 I'm sitting on in cash in my IRA should go into the market next month.
It should go into the market soon. I mean, there's no unless this fails.
Yeah,
and you should be safe with your IRA money, right? Like that's not something to play around with. That's something to be safe with, right?
I made
a conservative investment.
$2,000 on AMC with my IRA, so that was nice.
Good. I'm not saying bad job. I'm saying I'm not giving financial advice. So.
This is not a financial advice show, everybody. Take everything here said with a grain of salt.
But if the yield chart is indicating that a decision is going to come soon, that is going to be consequential, either to the upside or the downside. So we're about to see.
Yeah,
I'd say we'll see in the next 6 weeks.
That sounds right to me as well. December time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to tell us about yourself, Jakandar? I'd love to hear your commentary, but also I don't know who you are, so please introduce yourself.
Oh, yeah, I'm a kind of random streamer. I pop around to different panels to talk to all you smart people because, well, let's be honest, most of Twitch is full of people talking about drama.
Yeah.
I'm an old school leftist, former PMC chef, and autodidactic on just about every subject because I don't sleep and I read a lot.
Awesome. Well, you got everyone but Ty here is a leftist, so
I saw you on Prime's. It was a couple weeks ago now. And Cypher,
cool.
I ran into the other day for the first time, and yeah, he impressed me.
Cool.
Oh yeah, was that during the V Radio talk, or was that somebody else's?
Yeah, that was during the V Radio talk. The fact that you kept your patience during that fucking insanity, yes, that impressed me.
Was that the one I went on one-on-one with him, or was that during the Vivian stuff? Because the Vivian stuff. Okay, I kept my patience as much as I could during that. That was a shit show. Can you tell us how to pronounce your handle though?
It's Jakandar. Jack.
Jakandar. Okay.
Oh, yeah, almost everybody says Jack just because it's easier.
Gotcha. All right, Jack.
As to what you were saying, yeah, the next 6 weeks are really going to be what pans this out. And now that's going to really be determined, as much as a lot of people would hate to say it, by our elected. It is going to be people fearing what their politicians tell them to fear more than understanding the math you just explained. And if we're being honest, that's how America responds. Canada, in Europe, not so much. Here, very much so. So we're going to have to keep an eye on our financial experts in Congress as they start advising their constituencies over the next 6 weeks.
Well, the narrative right now, though, is already baked in with that we're having a recession within the next 2 quarters. So it's going to happen.
Yeah, but that recession was coming no matter what. In fact, I think that recession is about 1.5 years later than it was expected, if we're being completely honest. Because we were looking at a recession before COVID. and then
Okay,
COVID kind of gave a stopgap as to why everything was kind of shitty, and people accepted it, as opposed to understanding we were going into a recession. There was little we could do about it. We had prevented the buy yield curve from flipping. I think it was 7 times until this one. So it gets interesting when you're dealing with American economics, because it's a lot of emotion more than fact in our buying practices.
Are you happy I had him on now?
We weren't disappointed at all. I just didn't know who joined the chat. I just saw this
Exactly.
random box pop on.
I was waiting for
bottom.
him to prove the credentials, and credentials are proven. So
Yeah.
Go
Like
ahead.
last night, he was like, "Yeah, he's one of the smart guys," and I was on with a bunch of righties, and they all looked at me skeptically as the lone lefty. So,
like, no, for real. I've got more. All right, 2 things. Number 1, I'm gonna be flat honest with you. When it comes to being smart, quote unquote smart, the left tends to have that down. They tend to be more educated, tend to have more college degrees, tend to have that kind of thing. Totally get that, right? And I have to give that up. Is that there's a lot of people who are on the right, good folks, don't know their ass from their elbow when it comes to not half the crap they're talking about. Now, does that mean the left doesn't have that problem too? Abso-fucking-lutely. But
I'll be the first to admit it.
but there is
Surreal.
there is a error of intellectualism on the left. That while I think some of these people sniff their own farts among the intellectuals, at least most of them are attempted to be educated. Why?
The question is whether education is correlated with any kind of positive outcome. I mean, how positive outcome in terms of your ability to is being smart actually that important? I'm saying.
I would argue that intelligence, once you get to the higher levels, is a detriment to interacting with the average American.
And
Graduated high school at 13. I did not fucking coalesce with the average American until I was in my 20s.
right, and that's a very good point, and I think that's what I'm talking about. Like, is it actually helpful to humanity to have people that are smart, right? And so the answer that I believe is yes. No, it's yes. but yeah, I mean, like we wouldn't be in a situation where humanity would have access to better conditions than it did in previous generations if not for that. I'm a big believer that anybody who's outside the bell curve, anyone who's at the
Tails,
like a little bit weird, just people who are not, they don't fit into the normal rubric, that those people are actually the most valuable to society. Like people who have neurotypical, yeah, exactly, right. Those they just don't. The problem is that they don't conform, right? And that is really difficult to. That creates these like cleavages and divisions, right? And the people they're weird. People don't like to interact with those people, right? But the problem is that those people are actually really, really, really valuable and need to be empowered. So that's my take.
Well, no, the intelligence is absolutely an essential factor into the progress of humanity. But intelligence without fucking empathy, we saw that. It was called the 1940s.
Well, right, yes, but I think that there's a really good point. I think that conservatives, by dogging formal education, I've learned a lot from watching them, because it's true that 95% of the people out there are going to be able to live a really satisfying life if they don't have to worry, if they just have a simple life and they don't have to worry about all the like crazy stuff being thrown their way by these people on the tails, right? That it's disruptive.
But it's a false sense of security. We have created this false sense of security in the United States, and really Asimov nailed it on the head. We have been pushing a string of anti-intellectualism in this country for decades. And it has culminated in a great concept, and worded it best in a single sentence. Your ignorance is as good as my knowledge. So yeah, these people are content. They're it's the old adage, ignorance is bliss. They don't realize that they should be running around fucking pissed at every politician they voted in for the last 30 years, including the person that they love because he came and shook their hand and talked to them like a person. It's like they don't understand this concept because we have literally taught them not to pay attention to it. And I'd say it really started in the 90s with the No Child Left Behind Act, when we started to remove civics from school, to where the average kid today doesn't even fucking understand what the roles of each branch of government are.
Yeah, but reading, writing, arithmetic is all we need in a society, right?
Did anyone ever understand what those things were? I mean, I think that our system was designed with the idea in mind that few people would have access to that knowledge, and that most people, like, the education system was designed to give us good industrial workers.
No. See, that's why I say it started heavily in the 90s. In the 80s, dude, we were still doing calculus in fucking high school. Like, I was able to graduate high school at 13 because we still allowed kids to skip grades when they excelled. I was in talented and gifted courses because that shit still existed.
Do you think it doesn't exist now?
Not at anywhere near the levels it did in the 80s.
Depends on the state and the system. Yeah,
federally, it's been gutted. States have reinforced it since the federal gutting.
Yeah, and the reason the federal government gutted it is, again, because all these schools were not doing well, and so they just wanted to cut the funding. Also because, the federal government at the time didn't want public education to exist. So, Bush is Bush is not keen on public education.
Yeah, they were pushing more towards privatized education. They wanted a lot more Christian private schools and homeschooling at that point in time. So they pushed the No Child Left Behind Act, which was to make us have better test scores, make us be the first world country we're representing ourselves to be, rather than showing ourselves at the time to be 26th in math, 17th in science. I mean, we were literally not even in the top 10 except for 2 fields. And that embarrassed us. We had a high school dropout rate of something like 53%. And that embarrassed us. So we created the No Child Left Behind Act and started focusing only on literature and mathematics. We started ignoring history. We started ignoring civics. We started ignoring chemistry, fucking higher order science, and teaching to the test. Like, I could go to a kid now and give them a test from my 5th grade class. We're not even talking advanced mathematics. They would have problems solving it because it requires more critical thinking skills. It had more word problems. It required you to first extrapolate the formula from the word problem and then solve the formula. Now it's, here's the word problem, here's the formula, solve for X, and here's the 4 answers you can.
I'm getting right-wing rage fuel like deep in my bones right now. It's awful.
I mean,
and tell us about it, Ty. You're the only conservative here. Tell us what's going on.
All right,
and I have rage, so please join me.
Fair enough. Sure. All right. So here's the real point. The steel man that the right has that I absolutely agree with. We have emphasized like fucking teaching the Holocaust 6 times in 5 years, and teaching King Henry VIII and his fucking wives over teaching people auto shop or teaching people home ec or teaching people a lot of things that I think are incredibly fucking useful that you may not learn from your parents.
Or can't learn from your parents.
Yeah, but
true.
They've devalued technical school, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But
trying to push people into college. Yeah.
Hyper devalued technical skills, which, in all fairness, we thought that wasn't really going to be a thing. So, society, we all fucked up on that one, okay? We all need to own up on that one.
Well, it's computer age. They were trying to prepare us for the computer age, right?
Right. We all thought it was going to be the Jetsons by now. So yeah.
Well, that and we have to acknowledge the fact that a lot of parents didn't want people to actually break their bodies to eke out a middle class wage after 20 years. So they saw their other peers going into college and coming out with $50,000-$60,000 a year jobs with any degree whatsoever, and they're like, well, shit, I want my kid to have that. We have to acknowledge the reality that these people operated.
Right. And it was actually a attainment motivation too. Yeah, there was a lot of that.
But now I know people who have a master's degree from fucking Harvard who dig septic tanks.
Well,
Literally.
I mean, it happens. I mean, they did, but it's an ignorance thing. It's a this is the system that we built and we didn't really understand it kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to derail too much. I just felt
No,
like
no. See, that's not derailing at all. That's specific.
Well, Tiberius didn't end his point. That's what I was saying.
Oh, I thought you were building one.
I got a question from the chat here in just a second. But my whole thing is that I don't think it's a right, or I don't. Excuse me. I fervently agree with a lot of my right wing counterparts in that, like, education is incredibly disjointed, and like I know a lot of what they're actually saying is that politics, they're teaching politics I don't like, and I'll push back against that shit. But when it comes down to it, for me, is that for the most part, I'm hearing myself again. Jack, you got reverb. When it comes down to it, though, is that there is a reality where I was like, why is it that my home ec class is an elective, but I need to study fucking, geometry in high school? And I'm not talking like the geometry of, oh, hey, here's the area of a fucking square. I'm talking like proofs and shit. I'm like, no. Like, I will fight people all the long day. That does not need to be in anything outside of a college or institution. And even colleges have fucked this shit up. You don't need calculus for fucking half the degrees that they're asking you to have for them. I hope education gets an ass beating because it deserves one.
I mean, you're not entirely wrong, but that goes back to the No Child Left Behind thing, though.
This gets really hairy, right? Because how do you're talking about, like, if you look at like the French system, what they do is at like 13 they start putting people on different tracks.
Right.
So like your teacher assesses you. By the way, teacher does not give a shit about your stupid kids, right? Like I have my kids in school right now. The teachers are like great. And like, but they don't they interact with her as much as, a billion other kids in class. And also if your kid pisses off the teacher, like they're getting screwed. And the point is, then you get up and getting into different tracks. So some people go onto the college track because a teacher recommended them and they got attention. And some kids who are maybe a little quieter or who were slower or a little more withdrawn, everybody thought they're stupid. They end up in the other track. And the question really is about the choices that we're making for kids before they have the ability to make them themselves. That's where the hairy part comes in, right? Because most kids don't have any idea what they want to be doing or what their aptitude is until when they're like midway through their 20s, I feel like. So I don't know, it's hard.
Well, no, see, and that again, this all ties back to the fucking 90s and Bush, you prick. Not you prick, Bush prick. These were things that we talked about as young as first grade when I was a kid, dude. We started talking about like career paths and what we like, dude. I had teachers pushing me to be an oceanographer in second grade. Most kids nowadays don't know what the fucking oceanographer is, let alone fucking.
Is that true? Why are we assuming that everybody that the education is so far downhill?
Because
ask your child what an oceanographer is. They may be able to get it through context clues. They won't have been taught it in school.
You can't do that because Sam here is in the Northeast, and the Northeast still has a decent education system.
No, but the thing is,
it's the South and Midwest that fucked up.
I was in Detroit. They fucked it up there too.
I'd say Midwest.
Detroit was different. Detroit was New Rome. Have to have seen it back when I was there, man.
Sure, but I'm saying but before the DeVosses took over. I got it. I understand. I know what you're talking about.
What I'm getting at is, like, kids nowadays, they may be able to get it. Oceanographer. They'll get it from context clues and kind of give you the very basics. When I was a kid, we were actually taught what these jobs were because we were thinking about what did we want to do, because we still had things like vocational classes, like shop, like fucking, even medical training classes that to gear you to being a nurse or an EMT, etc. Like, this stuff was offered at the high school level. and it was talked about from the elementary and junior high level as well. So like now these kids are taught the test, pass the test, you have to pass the test, you have to do this, you have to do. They aren't even talked about their career.
Right.
They aren't even.
Right.
It is not even a concept to them. So they aren't even explained what some of these careers they could potentially want are. Let
You have
alone,
kids, and how old are they?
I have 3 kids, and they're all in their 30s. Well,
Okay.
late 20s to early 30s. Yeah, I'm old. Yeah, I now have a grandson entering junior high.
Wow, congratulations. That's amazing.
Some of this is being reintroduced, but that's over the last 4 years. So there was this giant gap
not here
between.
in Arkansas.
Say again.
And not here in Arkansas.
And so that's another thing. It's a regional problem. So Texas, I had a teacher friend, and her job was actually getting students in, I believe it was middle school, associated with the kind of jobs that you could have in the medical field. And this was in Austin. So that stuff is happening, but it's not as widespread as it used to be. I do have a question from my chat that I think is relevant here. Ace Fail Winter said, don't we want the person cleaning our septic tank to have a fine arts degree or a master's in critical theory? Question mark.
No.
I'm pretty sure this is
Yeah,
actually,
well, I
feel-
think that the
By the way,
right-wingers-
hold on. It's not over. I feel like we need both technical skills and theory and art to succeed as a society.
That's true.
I want to get to that. I've got one question of my own that was supposed to be asked. We didn't even get to that. That's not my question. It's from my chat. So let's answer this one real quick. Then we're going to go to my chat. All right.
Answer this first, so as opposed to my hypothetical. He has a master's in comparative religion from Harvard. He didn't need that for a fucking septic tank. I'm sorry.
All right. Sam, go first, and then
I think the right wingers out there would enjoy making a person with a master's degree from Harvard clean their septic tank, and I think that anybody who's cleaning septic tanks with a master's from Harvard should make that their marketing pitch. Like, you can make me clean your house and your septic tank. I have a fine arts degree from Harvard, and I think if you did that in red areas, you'd get a lot of customers. But I doubt it's necessary.
You're just horrified because essentially you just commodified anti-intellectualism. Hey, go bash on a nerd.
That's right.
That's what they want to do. That's what a lot want to do.
Yeah, it's like fetish roleplay, but for
You
like
just horrified Ty.
for political.
I'm sorry, Ty.
I will live. I think I'll be okay.
The look on your face, though, as we said this is.
I mean, last night I had people saying that I should accept Trump as the God Emperor, so like it could be worse.
Yeah, I like DOD. I do, but man, his memes sometimes it was just like, did I just hear that?
Ty, what was your question?
Before that, like the answer to the question, there was a big conversation between like the apprenticeship model of education versus the like liberal arts version of education. If anyone doesn't know what I'm talking about, there is the idea that you should largely train people in what they are going to be doing. It's going to be like straightforward, and you know, you can bust them out in 6 years and they can be hyper proficient at it. Versus liberal arts, which usually takes 15 years anymore, right? Both of them have very strong points. You're not going to have people who are going to be studying in as an apprentice, learning a bunch of shit they're never going to use. That's true. But the problem is that one of the things that my left-wing friends actually do bring up, which is absolutely on point, is that if you do interact with a system like this to where you have like apprenticeship systems across the board, what happens whenever you start talking to people about germs and health and how efficacious vaccines actually are, and they have no fucking idea what you're talking about because they didn't study health? That's actually a real thing. So, like, I don't know really where to, like, you know, draw my sword on this particular issue, if I'm being completely honest, because I think there's a real conversation to be had that we suck at education and we probably need to do more than one particular way of teaching kids. But holy crap. I think we need to accept two things. Number one, some people just can't learn. There's just shit that you can train them on one thing and they're one thing only, and that's all you can really get out of them. but there's the majority of people need to have a little bit of liberal arts backgrounds. They need to know how like health and fitness and how that actually works. They need to understand the basics. I'm just gonna say it. It's the basics. They need to understand shit. So yeah, that's my take. Is it's a mess.
I have one follow up for that one, if you don't mind. I have a bunch of people, especially that are coders or electrical or coding engineers, whatever, computer science. They're like, well, why did I have to take history in college? And then I try to talk to them about anything when it comes to civil society, and they know jack shit. And I'm like, that's why you need it, because you need to be able to interact with people. I don't care that you could have gotten your education in your job in 2 years. You don't know things that you need to know in order to interact with people beyond your chosen job skill set. So I just wanted to point that out.
And before Sam goes, I just point out slightly, Ty, you are slightly biased by the fact that you are growing up in a generation of kids who haven't been taught to critically think at a young age, like before the No Child Left Behind Act gutted our school system. So slight bias because of that, I think. That we have people who just don't know how to learn. We have taught them to become drones and then never taught them to critically think afterwards.
That's so weird.
And this is also a class issue too. Like people that are in more affluent areas are going to get better education. So
they're fleeing the public education system.
That too, yeah. But I was just pushing back. That's slightly because you are younger. Dude, my kids have that same opinion, and I'm like, no, when I was a kid, we taught how to think. That's why you know how to think, because your mother and I taught you what the schools were letting, go to the wayside because we had the time. Other people did not. That's why your friends don't understand how to learn a new concept. They have to go watch the how-to video on YouTube every time they do the activity, even though it's the 20th time they've done the activity.
Right. So, I'm not sure exactly at what point you're getting here. So I'll have to ask the clarifying question. Are you talking like sitting somebody in front of a fucking like a Rubik's Cube and teaching them the critical thinking skill set, which like, after a couple hours, they'll probably fucking get it? Or is it one of those deals to where it's something else entirely? Like, I'm not sure.
We have not taught them how to critically assess information. They don't actually know how to even justify or reliably seek out experts to find information from. They don't ask questions. They will literally read what they see in a textbook as fact and not question any nuance beyond it. They do not question what they are taught anymore, or if they do, they question it by throwing the baby out with the bathwater and trying to reinvent the wheel and coming up with a fucking triangle.
Every tech bro ever rediscovering everything, bringing it back to FTX.
Yeah, it's like we're seeing it now in field after field after field. We're getting military people coming out who don't even understand the life that they live because they were taught, hey, go just follow orders and you'll be happy. You'll never get in trouble. They didn't understand that their commanders had a certain hierarchy, that they had to follow different rules than you, so on and so forth. Not that they had priority or privilege. They actually had a totally different set of rules that these people don't understand. They think their bosses sit on their ass and do nothing. It's like, no. Your boss probably works hard. He just does a very different job than you. He's not doing the same job as you, and more often than not, nowadays, he doesn't understand your job any better than you understand his. These people don't question this. They just accept it as fact. When we were kids, we were taught to be skeptics. Now they're taught to be conformists.
There are just levels of shit to unpack here. Why do you do this to me?
Because I'm smart and you hate me.
No, I like you. The problem is that, yeah, you're smart, and sometimes smart is not a good thing, apparently. But whatever.
But we still didn't get to your question from your chat.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. All right, so Pray Check from YouTube is that this one's kind of off base, but you guys will follow. All right, so why are non-left-wing Indians often termed as right-wing Hindu nationalists by Western media? Because my understanding of light versus left is as follows. The right wing is deeply steeped in Christian orthodoxy, and the left is in bed with global Islamists and despises the lessons of harmony and multi-value diversity.
Wow, that's
and
a
then,
biased question if I ever heard one. No offense.
Sure. Okay. And then following with, does left wing still have the same policy like the Soviet Union, at least in terms of economic nationalization, subsidies, state dependence, etc.? Have fun. Have fun with all that. Guys.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to answer the first one. The second one, I have to ponder a little bit. So the first one is very, very easy. Anything that's based on tradition and traditional viewpoints and an embrace of traditional hierarchy is going to end up being conservative. And anything that is questioning of traditional hierarchy is going to end up being more left wing. And if you're willing to question things, and it's more complicated right now because the left has succeeded in raising a lot of questions about traditional hierarchies and challenging them over the past 50 years, right? But if you want to go back to the traditionalist viewpoint and move forward through history, depending on traditional values, you're going to end up being conservative. And a lot of people who come from many different countries all over the world, whether they're Muslim or Hindu or Shinto in Japan, it doesn't matter. Tradition is based, and to be clear, these traditions are not universal because they reflect humanity. They do, but what they do is they reflect humanity during a specific time, a specific time in the long story of the human race, right? Our cultural traditions looked very, very different when the majority of people living in the world were not sedentary but were nomadic, and ever since agriculture, things have changed significantly. And then the Industrial Revolution has changed things after that, and we're now in a period of really rapid change as well, right? So all these things are layers that create different cultures, and so traditions get revised. And so if you're thinking, if you look at people all over the world, the traditions that people find useful and adopt into their lives are the ones that survive and then end up becoming true. And so if you get people coming from India and they have a traditionalist Hindu viewpoint, it's because India, just like the rest of the world, was built on agriculture plus industrial production layered on top. And so there's a set of traditions that happen with that. And now that we've got new stuff coming that's changing things a little bit, they're going to be like, whoa, don't we need to go back and depend on the old traditions that we had in the 19th and 20th centuries? No. That's why a lot of those traditions look the same, in my opinion.
Well, there's that, and you're also having the fact that they are still. I mean, if we're talking in the span of nations, recently, out from under the thumb of Britain, in the grand scheme of things, they're still finding that cultural identity again. They are now feeling the push of a war on, a slightly distant shore, but close enough where they feel it because of, Russia and Ukraine. They have slightly seen the antagonism, lessen in Pakistan. So they have a lot different, thought processes now compared to, even 20 years ago. The Indians I was meeting coming, into the country back in the late 90s on HB1s, that dude, they talk a totally different mindset. They had a different government. They had their culture was on the rise. People, they were almost fetishized around the world to the point where they were gaining acceptance at a rate they had not gained before. So I'd say they have so many different pressures on them now that it's just they're asking different questions, and
Right.
that push to tradition is because of the societal of the
chaos.
acceptance. Yeah.
The chaos
the
that's
acceptance
happened.
breeds chaos. Yeah, the acceptance breeds chaos, and
That's right. It throws everything into question, right? And so my main point, I feel like I sort of went all over the place, so I just wanted to boil this down really quick because you reminded me of this. So that my main point is that it doesn't matter what your religion is or what your cultural viewpoint is. Those are all different, and they color your context differently, right? But I think that fundamentalist Christians and radical Muslims and traditionalist Hindus have a lot in common, and their beliefs are really, really, really similar. It just they come from different tribes, so the tribal context is different, which is why you see a lot of Christians and Muslims, fighting with each other. But really, they are the same. And I think a lot of the same things that drive fundamentalist Islam are the same things that are driving like Christian nationalism right now in the United States, which is gaining a lot of traction.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's if you strip it down to its core, which is what more people I think need to do when they're analyzing this stuff. Strip it down to its core. Take away all, for lack of a better term, people's window dressing, the cultural, the tribalistic lenses, surface level stuff, yeah, and look at what the actual teachings are of these various hyper traditionalist, more or less ancient practices. There's more overlap than not. I think the especially among the Abrahamic religions, so Judaism, Islam,
right,
and Christianity.
Islam is especially in the Arab world, they're Western. I mean, they're Westerners. It's just like they have much more in common with French and British people than either do with Japanese or Chinese people, culturally.
And that's because of the cultural overlap and the amount of cultural exchange that actually happened. I mean, you gotta look at if you look at the Quran, lots of it is just stripped directly from the Torah. Like it's the same stories with different Well,
I mean, like I have read the 3 primary holy Jewish books. I think it's 3. I've read so many different versions of the Bible. It's insane. And I've read the Quran. They're the 3 primary Abrahamic faiths left on the earth, and they don't realize how much overlap they have. They're damn near fucking the same circle on the Venn diagram. The only difference is the followers. Really. And that they hate each other.
Well, they're all fighting over the same souls, so. Mm-hmm. Well, at least.
Well, see, I'm an eclectic, yes. I was raised Roman Catholic, thanks, Irish dad. But yeah, I'm eclectic theistic now. I believe all the religions of the world are correct, that multiple gods, etc. It's the followers that got it wrong, that theirs is the only way, and that gods are not immortal. They die when their last follower stops believing.
Fair enough.
That's some like D&D shit.
No, it's actually older. It's actually a belief structure that comes out of Mesopotamia, circa 3200 BC.
Cool.
Love it.
It's in the reason why I said that's some D&D shit is it's like if you're familiar with Forgotten Realms lore, that's
we're
very
a bunch of fucking nerds. Holy crap!
Hey, welcome to. You can't say anything, Ty. You're just a sci-fi nerd.
No. Like I know exactly. Like he started talking Forgotten Realms, and I'm like, damn, I love it.
All right. Yeah. Come on. I mean, who didn't play Baldur's Gate?
No, dude,
it's all about that. It's the games, the Baldur's Gate games. If you're old enough to play those,
I have abdominal wounds. Do not make me go grab all the heavy ass books. Yeah, and like I'm an Elminster fan. If we're talking Forgotten Realms, like Drit Story and Kiss My Ass, he was good, but Elminster was the shit.
There was another part of that question though, was like asking why leftists like Islamic people or Islamism or something. Was that part of the question?
That was part of the question.
They don't. The
I
thing
was going to say, if they do, they're liking the American version of more secular Islam that they're seeing in Dearborn.
They want to welcome. They want to welcome Muslims into the country so that they can assimilate and we can all become one part of one beautiful human tapestry that is America.
It's part of that, but it's also the fact that Muslims were being directly targeted by the government. And we're not for that. We don't want people to be targeted directly by the government for whatever reason. And say what you want about like lefties not liking religion in general or not liking Christianity, but if the government suddenly started being like prosecuting Christians for their beliefs, except for the lefties that are really like traumatized about the whole thing, a lot of them would be like, hey, we got to stop this. And that's just I
end up in conversations with white nationalists where they're like, well, if white people were a persecuted minority, blah, 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 wouldn't you know? It's like, yeah, but they aren't. So that's the problem. If they were.
I face any persecution. I will fight any persecution. I have put my body on the line to fight persecution of people. That is not in question. I don't give a fuck who's being persecuted. That is wrong. It's just that simple. And that's why I think like the leftists that he's talking about here in America, the Islam that they're accepting is the shit, like I said, they're seeing in Dearborn, Michigan. Not radicalized, more fundamentalist hijab wearing style. We're talking people who like will work at a strip club but not strip. They like do the coat check and shit. Like like it is a different, more accepting version of Islam here in the United States as well. So, by the way, most of us leftists don't want state atheism any more than we want state religion. State atheism is also uber bad.
Yeah, in a perfect world, I would be teaching people about almost every religion, but not teaching them religion. Does that make? I hope that makes sense to people. Like about what it is.
If you detect any pattern here, it's that it goes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, where like I identify as a weirdo, as like a deviant, basically.
Same.
And I think most leftists probably see themselves that way, and so what's attractive to us is the idea that we want to embrace heterodoxy, that we're all different and that everybody is okay being different and that's okay, right? And where we start to get afraid for our lives and for the other people who we identify with, it's the people who are different from the mainstream.
And the people that aren't getting any level of acceptance or getting extreme pushback on the acceptance we're trying to express to them.
Right, and it's not because I feel guilty as a white person. It's because I actually identify with those people as someone who identifies as a weirdo. I know if people knew who I really was, they would want me put to death. That's why I'm a leftist.
Yeah, and it's like, I hate this concept of white guilt, that they think we all feel guilty about being white. No, I feel guilty about what some of my ancestors did. I don't feel guilty for it. I'm like, man, that sucks. We need to do better. That is an acceptable form of surface level guilt. Come on, people. This is not like we're sitting here in the corner crying, oh my God, I can't believe what our ancestors did. It's like, I can't believe what our ancestors did. How do we do it better?
But you will see people that are virtue signaling, like not to like, because the people here are, maybe a little more heady than some of the people you might see out in the streets every once in a while. So I don't want to give the wrong
radicals are out there.
Yeah, I don't want to give the wrong impression. Like I attended it was a debate of sorts. There was like this weird fucking thing they were trying to tear down. They're trying to remove one of the Confederate monuments, the unknown Confederate soldier they put across all courthouses across the freaking country, 1920s. So there was a debate in Georgetown to remove one of them from that, and there was several white people that were just screaming, check your white privilege, these people don't know what they're talking about, blah blah blah. And I'm like, dude, shut the fuck please shut the fuck up. So like I was standing in line, they were behind us, and there was a black woman in front of me, and she was looking at me like, you're fucking crazy. I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm sorry. So
and trust me,
there you go, apologizing for the white race. How dare you?
Hey, I have to apologize.
Apologizing on behalf of white liberals who are
yes.
White liberals are the worst. I say as a white liberal, we are the worst. So we deserve all the hate coming our way because we are fucking terrible. So
I'm not a white liberal, but yes, you do.
We're obnoxious. But to also, there was another point I was going to make about this is that there are some people that will view Christianity itself as negative, and I put that up to like trauma, for lack of a better term. Yeah, it's against fundamentalism, but a lot of people that have experienced the direct impact of this fundamentalist Christianity are going to be anti-Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Same reason why you had a lot of people join the Nation of Islam and are anti, white people, because you can't separate it, right? So if you're a group that's under oppression, it's going to create people that are going to hate you, or hate the group that you belong to, anyways. It's just a fact of life.
It is a sociological truth. We cannot avoid this. We have seen this true going back to before recorded history, where we are digging this evidence up from fucking injuries to bones.
Yeah.
I mean, this like these where we can actually track, because of the way they were buried, etc. Like, what group they were in and what killed them, etc. And we're tracking back to see who they were killed over, what was going on at that time period, etc. This is that we will never avoid this completely. It is human nature to hate the people oppressing.
Yeah. So don't be an oppressor. That's I guess it's the moral of the story.
Yeah. At the very
That's impossible. It's impossible. No. It's impossible to not be because if this is something that the left really needs to self-examine. The idea that there's like this theoretical perfect world out there that if people just stop oppressing each other. No, I mean, look, it's because the mainstream of society, and I'm not saying this with hate. I'm saying this is just how a lot of humans work. The mainstream of society is tribal. And so, and that's how we're grouped, right? So we have these identities, and then that is creating an in-group and an out-group, and that's just how humans are wired. And, nearly all humans. And the idea is, once you have these groupings, then if one's in a position to be able to take advantage of some kind of leverage over the other group, then they will, and because they can get away with it, right? So then if the other group gains that same leverage, so it's this is why geopolitics is so difficult, right? A lot of people out there are like, oh, we should just stay not involved in wars, like as if war was something that is ever desired by anybody. I mean, it's crazy, right? Like the reason why the U.S. is involved with NATO is because it's not because of Russia. It's because if any country ever dominated the European peninsula, they would start to threaten the U.S. position in the Atlantic. And if the U.S. position in the Atlantic is threatened, that makes us vulnerable to invasion. And we haven't been invaded because we control the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans. And Japan threatened us as well. So like when you start to give space, other people take up that space.
Sure.
And so you start to feel the need to take up that space in order to defend yourself from having your space taken up. And that's why I say it's impossible to avoid being an oppressor, because that space is there and it's going to be taken up by somebody. So if you have the ability to take it up and you have the advantage to be able to do so, through game theory, you're going to fucking do it.
No. See, here's the thing. We can't prevent tribalism. What we can strive to prevent is insular tribalism.
I don't know what that means. Those are just words.
To isolate, to the isolating tribalism. We can have outgroups. It is we need to start looking at these as less competitors, because as we are seeing now, we are a global race. We are a global economy. This is something that everything that's happening in the Shan and the fucking Myanmar is affecting us here, whether we realize it or not. I mean, these things literally all interconnect. The more we teach this, the more they understand that these outgroups are affecting us, the more they are going to want those outgroups to have better outcomes, because then they affect us less negatively.
But as we said earlier, not everybody has the same level of the ability to care about outgroups, to care about anything beyond their immediate vicinity.
You don't have to get them to care about that. You just have to get them to accept it and make it show it as not a negative.
I'm over here I am over here not able to give money to my kids because I am not making much money. Meanwhile, the United States government is coming up with $4 billion to give Ukraine. How am I supposed to care about Ukraine when I can't feed my kids?
I can't feed my kids was not where you started that. It was like,
I
give
know.
money to my kids, but
I know, but this is where it's going to go, right? That's the logical conclusion.
Yeah. The difference is as we improve material conditions here, that pressure that you're talking about, that fear of feeding your children is no longer an effect on your psyche to then capitulate against the interest of the Ukrainians. Instead, now it's $4 billion of stuff we already spent because we're not giving them cash. We're giving them surplus goods that we have. We bought fucking 20 fucking years ago and shit. It's like it's once they understand, hey, wait, this is stuff that we spent like 20 years ago. This has been sitting on a shelf. Oh yeah, give it to them, dude. And that's what you're seeing with the left people who are even struggling but support the fucking aid to Ukraine because they understand it's shit we bought in the fucking early 2000s that has maybe 5 more years on its shelf life before we have to start worrying about the fucking primer caps on the ammunition and shit. It makes sense to give it away when they understand that concept. The reason they don't understand that concept is the material conditions that us leftists are always railing about that people are facing. So if we can prevent the negative feelings here on just general, hey, can't feed your kids? Okay, here's EBT that actually gives you proper food that you're not going to get socially stigmatized for fucking accepting and be called a welfare queen when you show up to the fucking local grocery store with your kid in tow. One kid, by the way, will get you that fucking moniker if you show up with an EBT card. It's like when we can get rid of those social pressures, they no longer give a shit about us giving surplus ammo that we're not using to Ukraine. Or surplus armament, I should say, not it.
Yeah, I think what you're basically getting boiled down to is like maybe, well, not maybe. This is maybe my take. Then, the least that we could do, we could make any in-group or out-group not cleave around things people can't control. I'm okay saying fuck Nazis. I'm okay saying fuck tanky, Stalinist, whatever. Those people do not need power, right?
And the communist does the same thing, so
they can control that. You can't control that you're gay. You can't control that you're a brunette, brown hair. You can't control that you're black, white.
You can't control that you're born to a poor family. You can't control, etc. Exactly.
Can't control your intelligence level.
No.
Why don't shit on dumb people?
Don't get me wrong. I abhor. This is where I'm going to kind of countermand that. I abhor dumb people when it comes to trying to interact with them on something that is extremely high level. It's ridiculous to try and interact with them. But the problem is we are forced to due to that Asimovian truism we are now seeing in America that I brought up earlier. They think that their ignorance is as valuable as educated knowledge, and it's not. Everybody's allowed their opinion, and every opinion is worthwhile. No, it's not.
Yeah.
Your opinion is worthwhile to be shared. Does not mean that the end result of your opinion is a worthwhile pursuit. There's a difference between these two things. Don't get me wrong. I am a smart person. I am sure I have shared some dumb fucking takes over the years that should be absolutely ignored.
Are you familiar with first principles reasoning?
Not by that title. Is this game theory specifically?
It's a something that I see a lot gaining a lot of prominence on the right, and it's like a rejection of academic study and academic methodology using data, right? Like, so the way that this is like the foundation of science, right? That goes back hundreds of years. The idea is you create a theory. It's a steps process. First, you create a theory based on your observation of the world, just like, I think that this is the case. Then you set up an experimental design to test that theory. You collect data that fits that experimental design. You analyze the data once you get it, and then you make a conclusion using the data as evidence for your theory. And a lot of it's a scientific method. So a lot of right-wingers are rejecting the scientific method, instead saying that that whole thing is flawed. And instead, what we need to do is follow first principles reasoning. And the way that you use first principle, right?
Sorry, I'm looking for something. I'm not interrupting.
The way that first principles reasoning works, to my knowledge, is that you just start with something that you know to be true, and you move from one statement that you know to be true to the next, to the next, to the next, like following the train of thought until you get to a conclusion. And it's basically just a logical proof that if one thing is true, then the next thing is true, then the next thing is true, then the next thing is true. And right-wingers out there right now are like coalescing around this, from what I've seen, to say that this is the way that we should be observing and commenting on the world. And they're saying that the whole scientific inquiry that's been happening for hundreds of years is corrupt from the very beginning and was designed to keep these dirty academics in control and make them feel useful and put them in a position that they don't deserve in a society they're not useful, but they're acting like they're useful in order to trick everybody into thinking that, giving them a high salary or putting them in a position of importance, right? Right. So my observation on first principles reasoning is that it sounds to me really powerful if you're someone who has the ability to really assess statements for logical fallacies, and for assumptions or unrecognized assumptions. And the way that like a lot of this is like this first principle stuff comes out of Elon Musk crap, or like this like
I just googled it. Yeah,
it's like Elon Musk's a big proponent of this. This is like the idea, like, and Elon may be really smart, so maybe he's able to do it, right? It's like you just really have to be a brainy person in order to do this. But the problem is, if most people think this way, everybody has, like, the average person has so many unchallenged assumptions that they just assume are true, but are actually really terrible assumptions about how the world works. Like, so bad, right? Like, if you start from all people are born with either male or female genitalia. That's wrong. It's wrong. And there's just so many steps along the way. Each time you make a statement that leads you from A to B, right? All those little nodes along the way, you're potentially opening yourself up to something by making a logical assumption that will leave you at the conclusion that is so wrong that you're like, if you were building an airplane based on that assumption, you would crash. You'd never make it off the ground, right? Because those assumptions can pile up and they get exponentially worse and worse and worse. Because if you make a bad assumption based on a bad assumption, you're just like, you're over here you end up turned all the way around instead of.
There's a coding principle and general science principle to explain this in a very simple way: garbage in, garbage out. It's just truth.
Data is so much like that. Oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, since you just brought up data, don't always trust data.
I know.
There's this lovely thing in fucking statistics. Oh, I'm talking chat more than you.
Yeah, I gotcha.
There's this lovely saying in mathematics: lies, damn statistics and lies, because data can be massaged and manipulated, not in the way that they are saying, oh, this data is false, just that what they tell you to understand from that data is false.
That's why you need peer review. That's why you need peer review. People who understand statistical method enough to criticize from a place of love, right? And also that's why media reports based on these like hyped studies are always so crappy, right? You don't want these things publicized. You want them to be. That's why they're in the ivory tower, away from the public. You want them to be gestating in the academy before people try to apply them to the real world in a way that impacts the public.
Well, yeah, before they try to apply them to the real world, yes. I disagree with the ivory tower overall because I believe in transparency of education, but other than that,
I'm not saying hide it. I'm saying you can make all the information public and most people won't end up trying to read it, right? All the stuff that
you were right in the applying part. I was just I want the transparency. I don't want the ivory tower. I want the glass tower.
The reason why journalists exist is not because they have access to information that the public doesn't. Most of the time, sometimes they have sources who are giving them information that's not public. But 95% of the information that's reported on by reporters, it's not. It's public information. The issue is that is an interpretation of the source documents. And so what you need are people who are able to interpret the source documents, the source materials accurately. And the problem we have right now is trust in that analysis, which I think is rightly founded.
Or at the very least, the ability to analyze the data critically as opposed to with bias. At the very least, just that. The ability to turn off your bias long enough to read the numbers. Don't read abstracts, don't read fucking opinions. Just when you're reading the raw data, turn your fucking bias off, because guess what? When I do that, I have been wrong more times than fucking more people would care to ever admit, because your bias will color things if you read the abstract first, if you read the synopsis first. Just read the data and then go and read and be like, oh, wait, what you're saying doesn't make sense now, etc. Sometimes you have to be willing to admit you're wrong. But going back to your very first point when you started this, some of this is also the rejection of modernity and the rejection of whiteness. And I use that term by the colloquial use nowadays. I shared a link in,
you say?
Yeah, I shared a link in content. Yes. In content channel here in Ty's Discord. This is a school debate. These are students discussing the rejection of scientific method as it was created to oppress the understanding of the world of minorities and things like this. These kids are talking about, how the scientific method has no way to describe how the witch doctor can cast lightning at somebody in the next village and shit like that. It's a very interesting watch. It was Ty will know this person. Ical Rich is the guy who shared this with me. This shit blew my mind when I saw it the first time. Part of this is we have been the oppressors so long, they want to reject everything about us, going all the way back to ancient times, because they tie everything to the horrors of modernity still. So they want to reject everything. And this is a prime example. These are students. I forget if it's high school level or university level, but this is an actual debate in a classroom, like between students and shit. It is wild if you watch it. We need to figure out how to reject the bad things about the past without rejecting everything from the past.
The link you shared is only like 4 minutes long. Is there another one, or is that the one you meant to share?
Yeah, so that's the one, because it's the part where somebody finally tries to go, well, that's not true. You can't cast lightning to the next village. They go on the warpath over the way this kid just asked a simple question, contesting this. Yeah, it just blew my mind. There is a longer one. I'll have to ask Rich for it. This is the one he shared with me. But yeah, it's like we need to not get here as we're rejecting the bad things about history.
This is literally the only video the channel has.
No, he said there's a full video of this debate.
I'm saying like the video you shared. This is the only video on this channel.
Oh yeah, I don't dig into channels like that. I shared this from a link in another content thing that Rich had shared with me. So this was literally shared from Discord to Discord. I didn't even open it up in YouTube.
Wild.
But yeah, this is, and I'm just like, this is just wild.
That's so interesting. And these students are not part of the like oppressing classes, right? But there are kids out there now who are like, in their 20s or whatever, who are saying reject modernity, embrace masculinity, right? And that's a very traditionalist. That's a traditionalist viewpoint, and it's very similar to what you're describing, right? Where it's like these are modern ideas aren't useful to me. In fact, they're standing in my way.
Yeah, but the thing
is that's very reasonable to think. That's very reasonable to think, but. The question is what you're deconstructing, and it was whether you want to deconstruct it or reject it. Mm-hmm. And this is where I think the left has a more sophisticated view than the right. Is that I think the left would want to deconstruct it and really examine it, and the right will just say the hell with the whole thing.
Well, I mean, I've seen a lot of leftists just wanting to reject stuff too. So I mean. That's kind of where I'm at. Like, I mean, let's be honest, because I'm one of these weird leftists. I'm not an ACAB or defund the police people. I believe police are necessary. I believe they need a complete reworking from the way we're using them now. But that's a different conversation. So it's like we now see people who are like, oh, get rid of all police. We can do community policing with like neighborhood watch. And I'm like, yeah, let's see how that works out for you, bud. They have to do that in third world countries that don't actually have police forces. Go ask those third world populations if they like the lack of police.
Yeah, I mean, like if you spend any time in Brazil,
A very short time, but yes.
Then you'll know exactly how things go over there. What happens is, and this is what happened in a lot of these situations here in the United States, is that without a monopoly on violence from the state, warlords will take over, and the gangsters, anybody who's able to get a monopoly on force, will just become the enforcer. And the problem is not that somebody has a monopoly on violence. The problem is that there's no accountability measures on those people who are wielding that violence.
I swear I've seen this movie before. What was it? Oh, Chaz! Right. I saw that movie.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, right? Like then you end up with the only guy who has a crew of 12 people with some AKs.
But the militant Antifa can administer justice in a fair manner. Come on, guys.
Well, this is where I get when I watch, because the place I primarily appear on panels is Prime Guys. There's this guy who shows up, Fabian Liberty. I know Ty knows him. I've seen you interact with him. He's an ANCAP. And I'm like, dude, what you were talking about is warlord politics. Well, why do we want to go back to warlord politics? Why is this a benefit?
Because he believes that he would be one of those people to be able to be a warlord. They all do. Every single one of them. They either believe, when it comes to ANCAPs, they either believe that they have the skills and it's only the government keeping those skills from being utilized in such a way to make them stinking rich and neo-feudalist, or they're fucking LARPers that think that he can go out and rustle up a posse to enforce their will on others.
Or they're people who just believe that the strong are right to dominate the weak, and that is morally justified.
That too. But I don't consider those people ANCAPs. But I get where you're going.
Liberty, but Fabian Liberty specifically is an anti-consequentialist. That is what he describes himself as. He will not subscribe to any consequentialist framework when discussing politics, human rights violating, none of it. He will not subscribe to. He does not subscribe to violence against another person for any reason. I'm like, how the fuck are you going to enforce the shit that you're talking about, dickhead? Violence is something that is part of human nature. It will always be. It's now acceptable levels of violence, like restraining you and putting you in handcuffs calmly into the back of a police car, or throwing you to the ground and dislocating your shoulder. These are different levels of violence.
The interesting part is that the places in the world that have the highest rates of violence, where there's nobody in charge, they have come up with some really interesting models that would really benefit us to consider, like restorative justice. That's a real framework, and it works. Instead of a punishment framework is lame, and restorative justice is what actually works.
There is value to punishment justice too, but we need to be less punishing, more restorative. I agree, 100%. Because think about it, dude. There are some fucking monsters in the world who do just need to be punished.
But the punishment doesn't actually necessarily do anything. If those people exist, never mind. I'm not going to get into that conversation.
I was about to say,
we'll avoid that one.
No, we're talking the Dahmers,
that's why I say we'll avoid that one.
That's the thing. Let them people stay in jail forever. That they don't need to be restored, etc. But the rest of them, we need to be more restorative. As somebody who's been to jail, I agree.
Sorry to hear that.
Well, it was I'll be honest with you. I broke the law. I fucked around. I found out when I went in front of the judge. He said, "How do you plead?" I said, "I plead dumbass. I'm sorry. I plead guilty." And he laughed and he gave me 60 days instead of the 6 months I could have been facing. So, because it's like, dude, I fucked up. It was just that simple.
Yeah, that's tough. I'm sorry to hear that has been a part of your life.
No, I'm not, because guess what? It taught me not to do the stupid shit I was doing at that point in time.
Yeah, but wouldn't have getting caught had done the same thing to a degree? I mean, that's what we know deters crime. We could go on this a while, so I won't.
I gotta say, I have to take off. My daughter's probably gonna wake up soon from her nap, and I gotta.
We got about 10 minutes left on the stream anyway, so.
How old's your daughter?
Good time.
She's 2.
Awesome. Congrats.
Yeah. Thank you. Really good to meet you, Jack Canadar and Cypher and Ty. Really, really glad to see you both as usual. And I really enjoyed the conversation, even though we mostly talked about, stuff that's very not our usual fare. It's very non-concrete. It's like philosophical, which is what most content is like on the internet. But I still really enjoyed it.
It's important. But the thing is where we were going from the data you presented was a philosophical push, because we live in a country where people don't rely on data, as you so eloquently pointed out at the end.
That's true. And yet the people who are looking at that data and know how to interpret it are the ones who are going to end up rich out of this chaos. So, all right.
100%.
Thanks, everybody.
Glad to meet you, dude.
Good to see you, Sarah. I hope you have a wonderful day.
You too, everybody. Talk to you later. And IV, if you're out there, hope your car stuff is doing all right.
IV.
Invite to Lethy's server, the place where Lethy and Ike.
Oh my god!
All right, see you later, everybody.
Why does he?
Thanks, chat.
Why does he do this to me?
Who's IV?
Here in a moment.
What did I miss? The context.
Nate Dallin. Yeah, Nate Dallin. Like I don't know why he's gotten in a habit of just calling Nate Dallin IV. I don't know. Like I mean his handle, Discord handle is IV. It's actually for 4 or something. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head. But yeah, like, god damn it. Why do you all ruin my things?
Why did we ruin it?
What happened?
Just memes.
Oh,
okay. No, it's like, honestly, the thing is when we're talking about the economy in this country, we have to talk about emotions, because that's what drives it in this country more often than not. Hence why we watched, and we will bring this back to the billionaire and con man fucking douchebag Elon Musk. We watched him, fuck around and find out buying Twitter. We watched him tank Tesla before, what was it? It was down to $180 a share last time I looked at it. Twitter is down to, double-digit employees from the last figure I saw.
Nice.
This is a guy who works in California, has run multiple businesses in California, understands the employment law in California, and in California fired people with a meme of him doing the Buddy Christ fucking pose with a fucking bubble of fucking words over his head saying you're fired. Did that so much that on day 3 of firing people, he realized he fired the people with the passwords and fucking keys to the building, and started having to ask them to come back. This was all done on emotion. This was an intelligent person who literally allowed emotion to drive his decision making, and he has tanked his fortune by over 42% minimum, estimated up to 55% of his overall wealth in emotional decisions.
Supposedly, he's transferred a lot. Yeah, I'll stop.
No, I was gonna say sounds based. I can't figure out where this guy is, to be honest.
It's very simple, Ty. His ex-wife cheated on him with a trans woman, and he wants to be able to make trans jokes again. Ergo, he had to buy Twitter to make trans jokes, and that's why everybody he's reinstated on Twitter are all the people that made trans jokes and talked shit about trans people. The Babylon Bee, Jordan Peterson, but Alex Jones isn't coming back. Trump might come back, but he's doing this stupid little poll, right? He's still trying to get the advertisers in, but he knows the advertisers would actually be okay with people shitting on trans people. So that's what he wants to do. He wants to shit on trans people because his heart got broken and he doesn't know what to do with it. And also his daughter's trans, so there's something with that as well. I don't know. But that's what it really boils down to.
This is a dude who comes from the family where his father married his stepsister and has 2 kids with her.
Yeah.
This dude is not normal.
And he also is, and I'm not saying that, okay, no, I won't use that. Like a lot of rich genius people that have certain idiosyncrasies, he wants to have a lot of babies.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So-
Actually, the running joke in the tech circles is who is he impregnating at Twitter?
Yeah.
I think that's the only reason he kept the ones that he left around is so he could pick a new dating pool.
Well, that and the HB1 visas, they couldn't go anywhere.
Dude, when somebody pointed out the only people who were left primarily were H1Bs, I'm like, you realize what that means? He's like, no. I'm like, the only people who stuck around were people with such heavy material conditions on their fucking, psyche that they were like, fuck, we can't leave.
Yep. Well, aren't they contractually obligated to remain?
No, they can actually leave if of their own volition. They just would have to go back to their home country, and that's what I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying.
They have are so high that they're or so low in their home country that they're like, fuck, I have to put up with this crazy person. And anybody who didn't have that fucking material condition was like, fuck this shit, I'm out.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
I mean, it's like, Ty, you and I were talking about this the other day. Our economy is a shit show because we have people talking about it who don't understand it. We have people who are overall driving the metric with these fucking fictitious currencies like cryptocurrencies that are pumped and dumped constantly, even by the streamers within our general vicinity. It's like, how do we avoid this when everything's about freedom of this, freedom of that? It's like freedom of everything is leading us down a really fucking scary road.
Yeah, so, God damn it, you had to bring me here. So, here's my thoughts, straight out. One of the biggest reasons I'm becoming a more socially conservative / authoritarian person is that I fervently believe that any society that doesn't have, serious fucking pushback just goes off the fucking rails, right? And this is why I piss off so many people when it comes to the trans conversation, is I think trans people are real, but I think it's a fucking fad, and 90% of these people are actually trans. But there's
I
no
wouldn't go that
fucking,
high, but I get what you're saying.
But there's no fucking pushback. And that's where I look at the right and I'm seeing what they're doing. I'm like, I know what they're doing. I know why they're electing Herschel Walker and fucking Donald Trump and all these other folks that are immorally incontemptible. People that I fucking don't want to even be in the near room with or be associated with, right? It's because the right's just look, if the left isn't going to even keep track of their own, then we don't care. You aren't worth being a part of. So we'll send anybody and everybody who's willing to tell you that you're evil, vile pieces of shit. Literally 90% of the election fraud people, regardless of if they actually believe it or not, is this the right telling the rest of the country, we're tired of your fucking shit. It's literally what I came.
The thing is they're the minority. And as we going back to my very first fucking debate that I was invited to, the filibuster is what's leading it. We have shown through the statistics on the filibuster that these people represent about 36 to 39% of the population, yet they drive as much power as a near majority. It is ridiculous. So why is it their pushback at such a vehement and vitriolic level is warranted when they are the minority?
So here's the thing: are they the actual minority in a given sense?
Well, we're talking the hyper conservative, not the normal conservative.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say the problem is the big issue that we had seen up until this election was that the normie conservatives were jumping in headlong with these folks, right? So you were talking at minimum 48% of the population was openly being I like these guys, right?
Yeah, and in this election, thankfully, they learned their lesson.
Well, let's wait for primary 2024 before we make that decision.
Agreed. But they seem to be learning their lesson. How about that?
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. The moment that I get a chance, I'm campaigning for DeSantis. So, let's go. But when it comes down to it, is that for me, these folks are like the radical left, but they are far more militarized, and they've had years and years and years and years and years of things not going their way. Whether it was gay marriage, whether it was just the general talking points. Like these are people that just want to be assholes. And like this is where I'm like, you know what? Some of these folks have a point, but when it just comes down to it, you never want to be in the same room as 90% of these folks because they're bad. They're like
Fabian. Every time Fabian makes a good point, I'm like, God damn it! Why do I ever want to agree with you? Because everything else you say is horrible.
Okay, Fabian's smart. And Fabian is not a person that I actively am like, oh god, he's immoral, he's bad, I don't want to be in the same room as him. It's people like fucking Redneck, if you remember him.
Yeah. Barely, but yeah.
Like this site, like they have a very real lived experience. They have a very real like viewpoint. Like I'm not saying like they're just, people, they're not people. But the problem is that they don't realize that in normal society anymore, because they've been stuck terminally online on the internet, is that they wouldn't be welcome. Right? And like I'm saying, excuse me, I'm having a stroke, but I'll simply suffice it as this. There is a lot of people around my neck of the woods that will use the N-word very, very casually, right? And they get really pissed off whenever they go online and they, can't basically type the way that they talk. And there's some levels where I'm like, you know what, the left overly push backs on some stupid shit. But when it comes down to it is that, number one, when it comes to the internet, you are not dealing with the more rural space of operating. You're not dealing with those norms and those fixtures.
Just localized, because you're dealing with everybody. You're not as localized. Yeah.
Yes, and like localization has has rules, right? Like you can get away with certain things in Chicago that you can't get away with in New York, and vice versa. But when it comes down to it, is that there is different rules when you live in the sticks versus when you live in the cities. You don't really have to talk and police your speech in the same way in the sticks as you do in the cities, because in the cities there's anyone and everyone that you could possibly offend. And shout out to, I believe it's my Korean friends out there. I'll have to double check this one. There's a particular word that you guys will use that gets you in trouble with a lot of black folks for some reason. I couldn't tell you why. If anyone doesn't know, I can fill you in later, but it starts with an N, and it's actually like the word for what is it? It's the word for like yes, if I remember right, or like
there's also one that is food related that is very similar, ends in an I.
Yes. Anyway, so like you can't go out into the city and just say whatever you want. Makes sense. But on the other side of that is I think there's a lot of people that are coming to the realization that the moment they actually have to partake in the rest of society, they haven't realized that they would not be welcome. And I think they're having to deal with that. And it's not just the fact that like leftists and the left has taken over the social narrative. That I think even a decent number of right wingers would just be like, you're a jackass and you need to shut up.
Yeah, I consider you fairly right-leaning, but you would not tolerate somebody coming in and going on a tirade of anti-Semitism or anti-blackness with slurs and ridiculous shit like that. Like, there was one that I won't say his name because just because I don't want to fucking even bring him to your space if it fucking hears it. But I had to see him in chat the other day say, and I quote, because like I had to copy and paste it to people because it just blew my mind that this was allowed in chat and not moderated. Somebody had said about Detroit going broke, and he's like, yeah, you're all for watching Detroit go poor and people suffer. And he responded, I did, period. I watched as Democrats and the black people sucked Detroit dry between the 70s and the 2000s. What the fuck are you talking about, idiot? And I'm sitting there, dude, I'm from Detroit. The guy he was talking to is Paul. We love Paul. Paul X BSOG. He's from Detroit and lives in Detroit, if I'm not mistaken, still. It's like, dude, I grew up there through the time period you're talking about. You're fucking wrong. It was the corporations that sucked us dry as they broke the unions and fucking absolutely ripped us a fucking apart. it was the minorities who were having their wealth extracted from them en masse as rents were doubled, tripled, with fucking amenities being ripped out of the fucking buildings and shit like that, to the point where we ended up having to riot in, certain time periods, and, over it, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, you wouldn't accept that shit. You're a righty, though. Like, so these people wouldn't be accepted in your spaces either, because they want to just blame shit on stuff that's fiction. You at least want to blame it on the reality of our issues. You may disagree on what the causes are, but you want to blame it on reality, not bullshit.
I mean, we can always debate on what reality is, because there's, like, I'll put it this way. I have opinions pretty much anywhere and everywhere regarding me being a righty that pisses off the left and the right all in one fell swoop, whether it's trans conversation, whether it's black folk, whether it's whatever. Is that I pretty much, split hairs with everybody, because I think there's some relevant points that pretty much everybody raises. But when it comes to Detroit, I'll put it this way. Like, we can blame companies, we can blame all this. The entire foundry, like the greater Midwest that, relied on actually making shit, we got fucked. And we got fucked from multiple directions. The business interests decided that they were going to lobby, and they were going to lobby hard, and they succeeded in tearing down unions after years and years and years and years. And, like, don't get me wrong, unions got themselves into a really bad spot. They did, absolutely. You had Jimmy Hoffa and the Teamsters. You had what the hell was it? What was it? The firefighter thing that you talked about.
Firefighters in New Mexico, Texas, Utah going on strike and going to the fire calls, and instead of fighting the fires, pulling out lawn chairs and beers and watching the fucking house burn.
Right. So shit like that.
I was going to bring up Jackie and the motor industry unions in Detroit. He was just known as Jackie. He was the union boss in Detroit for years.
So gotcha. I actually have to go. Greatly appreciate you letting me be on the show, Tiberius, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. And Jack, it was nice meeting you, man.
Yeah, nice meeting you. I'm gonna send you an invite to lead the server too, because we're gonna have some chats later.
Yeah, and the conversation I had with V Radio should be on my YouTube channel now. Should have published while we're on the conversation. So it's multi-layered. It's a good chat.
Yeah, the Vivian thing was not so good, but I hope he has a better appearance.
We'll see.
I love Vivian, but that shit went off the rails so bad.
It wouldn't have gone off the rails had WikiWik not said that Proud Boys weren't a political group. That
is it WikiWik? I thought he was WYSIWYG. I kept calling him
WikiWik. I don't freaking know. Whatever the guy's name was.
Did he really name him "See is what you see is what you get"? Because that's a tabletop gaming term.
Probably.
And I'm like, really, dude. And then you're going to be saying some dumb shit like this? Come on, man.
Well, I'm talking to him on Tuesday, so wish me luck.
Well, yeah. Take a Valium.
All right. Well, guys, all right. With that one, I'm gonna close out my stream. Appreciate y'all.
Take care, sir.
You too. All right, everybody. That was the conversation with Tyberius D. I hope you had a good time listening to us talk about a variety of different topics, and it was informative as well as entertaining. So if you liked what you heard, and I know what you did because you're still with us right now, please smash that like button for the algorithms. It really does help us out. If you ever want to reach out to me for a show appearance or a debate or whatever, there's two easiest ways to get a hold of me. First off is at Twitter, at crowdsourcepoll. I like to post memes there and some other stuff while the dumpster fire is going. And you can also hit me up on Discord or join our Discord, which you can get above or below, depending on where you're watching us. And as we say at Crowdsource Politics, keep your head up through the political storm.